José Protásio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda, born on June 19, 1861, in the Laguna province of the Philippines, was a man with an impressive educational background. However, he is best remembered for his tireless efforts to reform his homeland. This video explores the life of one of the Philippines' most revered historical figures. To understand José Rizal's world, we need to look back at the political climate of the time. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan landed in Cebu while on an expedition for the Spanish crown. A local chief convinced Magellan to help him fight a neighboring tribe on the island of Mactan, where Magellan was killed by a poisoned arrow. Despite this initial defeat and 3 subsequent failed expeditions, a permanent Spanish settlement was established in Cebu by 1565. By the end of the 16th century, Spain controlled much of the Philippines, from Mindanao to Luzon. The Spanish colonizers faced a huge challenge. The archipelago contained over 150 different cultural groups, many with their own languages. The Spanish sought to impose Western ideals and Catholicism on the native population. While many isolated communities held onto their traditions, those in colonial centers faced more overt oppression. Local histories were destroyed, and anyone caught practicing indigenous traditions was punished. Rizal was born into this Spanish-ruled Philippines in 1861. His family was relatively wealthy, with a background of prosperous farmers. He had a diverse ancestry, with Chinese, Filipino, Spanish, and Japanese roots. In 1849, a Spanish decree forced native families to adopt a Spanish surname from an official list. Rizal's family name of Lamco was changed to Mercado. Later, his father changed the family name to Rizal on the suggestion of a family friend. When José enrolled at the Ateneo Municipal de Manila, his older brother, Parciano, advised him to use only the surname Rizal to avoid any negative attention Parciano had received. Parciano, 10 years older than José, had become involved in subversive political ideas after 3 priests he knew were executed. This occurred in the aftermath of a 1872 uprising by Filipino workers and troops, which, though quickly suppressed, was used by the Spanish to crack down on anyone supporting governmental reforms. Several Filipino intellectuals were arrested and imprisoned for life. The public execution of 3 Catholic priests, whose connection to the uprising was never proven, turned many, including Parciano, into Filipino nationalists. Parciano was prevented from finishing his education for speaking out against the injustice and returned to the family farm. By using the name Rizal, José was able to distance himself from his brother's reputation and flourish in school. Rizal excelled in his studies. He became fluent in several languages, won numerous literary awards, and graduated with the highest honors, earning a Bachelor of Arts. In 1882, he secretly traveled to Madrid, Spain, with the help of his brother and uncle, to continue his education. He enrolled at the Universidad Central de Madrid, studying medicine, philosophy, and literature. In Europe, Rizal was exposed to more liberal ideas. Inspired by his brother's opposition to the harsh Spanish rule, he committed himself to advocating for governmental reform in his homeland. Rizal quickly emerged as a leader among the Filipino students in Madrid. His political ideas were first published in La Solidaridad, a newspaper founded in Barcelona by Filipino journalist Graciano Lopez Gina. The publication was the voice of the propaganda movement, which called for religious and governmental reforms in the Philippines. The movement highlighted issues like the lack of educational integration between Filipinos and colonialists. Public education had only been introduced in the 1860s and was controlled by the Catholic Church. As a result, very few Filipinos could read or speak Spanish. In 1887, Rizal published his first novel, Noli Me Tangere, Touch Me Not, originally titled The Social Cancer. He explained that the title referred to a type of cancer so painful that the afflicted couldn't bear to be touched, a metaphor for the suffering of his country. The fictional plot was set against a historical backdrop that exposed the corruption and brutality of Spanish rule. The novel tells the story of Crisostomo Ibarra, who returns to the Philippines after 7 years of study in Europe. He learns his father died in prison after being falsely accused of crimes by a priest, Father Damaso. Throughout the story, Crisostomo endures abuse from the clergy, who try to kill him and insult his heritage. He is eventually framed for a rebellion and is presumed dead after a failed escape from jail. The book's strong critique of the Catholic Church's role in supporting Spanish colonialism resonated with many Filipinos, sparking a push for independence. Authorities quickly banned the novel and punished anyone caught reading it. Rizal returned to the Philippines on August 5, 1887, but he had become a target for the police. He left 6 months later, feeling his presence endangered his family. He traveled to France and Germany, where he completed his studies in ophthalmology. While Rizal was away, his hometown of Calamba continued to suffer under the Dominican friars who owned the land. In January 1888, the tenants submitted a memorial to the government detailing their exploitation. They lost the case, and their homes were burned down. Rizal's father and 3 sisters were among those expelled from their ancestral farms and deported. In response to his critics and the ongoing persecution of his people, Rizal wrote more articles and essays. In 1891, he completed his second novel, El Filibusterismo, The Reign of Greed, a sequel to Noli Me Tangere. The sequel follows Crisostomo, now disguised as the wealthy and influential Simon. Simon returns to the Philippines to incite a revolution, overthrow the corrupt ruling class, and rescue his former fiancée. However, his plot is uncovered just before it can be carried out. Consumed by revenge, Simon dies by suicide but is told by a priest that God will forgive him for his past suffering. The novel again exposes the injustice of the government but ultimately argues that violence is not the answer. Rizal returned to the Philippines in 1892, determined to achieve reform peacefully. On July 3, he founded La Liga Filipina in Manila, hoping to unite Filipinos and offer mutual support. However, he was deported to Dapitan after subversive pamphlets were found in his sister's suitcase. He remained in exile for 4 years. During his exile, Rizal made the most of his time. He practiced ophthalmology, documented local flora and fauna, and built a school and waterworks for the community. However, he fell out of touch with the independence movement. Inspired by La Liga, Andrés Bonifacio founded the Katipunan, the first Filipino revolutionary party. Rizal denounced the group, believing their violent methods went against his own pacifist ideals. In 1895, Rizal applied for and received permission to serve as a doctor in the Spanish army in Cuba. He traveled to Spain to enlist, but in August 1896, the Spanish discovered the Katipunan, which had grown to an estimated 100,000 members. Bonifacio called for an immediate armed rebellion. Although Rizal had no involvement with the group, he was arrested on his way back to Spain. Rizal was falsely charged with treason and sedition. He was court-martialed and accused of founding the revolutionary organization. His enemies within the church and government ensured his conviction, and he was sentenced to death by firing squad. Rizal maintained his innocence to the end, writing to a friend, "I am innocent of the crime of rebellion. So I am going to die with a tranquil conscience." The night before his execution, he wrote the poem, Mi Ultimo Adios, My Last Farewell, lamenting that he would not live to see his homeland free. He smuggled the poem out of his cell, hidden in a petroleum lamp he gave to his sister, whispering in English that there was something inside. On December 30, 1896, just before 7 a.m., Dr. José Rizal was executed. With his hands tied behind his back, he walked to the execution site with his head held high and a smile on his face. His last reported words were, "Consummatum est, it is finished." The Spanish cheered, but the Filipinos watched in silent rage. Rizal's death did not kill the nationalist movement, it fueled it. He became a martyr for the cause. Just 2 years later, on June 12, 1898, the Philippine archipelago declared its independence from Spanish rule. This was the first step on a long road to full autonomy, which was finally achieved on July 4, 1946. Today, Rizal remains a national hero of the Philippines, inspiring many with his patriotism, compassion, and peaceful ideals. The modern national democracy of the Philippines owes a great deal to the ideology of Dr. José Rizal.